Bear cub was caged on a poacher's truck speeding down the highway. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The autumn wind whipped across Interstate 87, carrying the scent of pine and wet asphalt. Rain had fallen earlier that morning, leaving the road slick and glistening under the patchy afternoon sunlight. Zephyr Collins gripped the steering wheel of his old sedan, glancing occasionally at the rearview mirror where his 11-month-old daughter, Luna, babbled happily in her car seat. His wife, Aria, dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from their weekend camping trip in the Adirondack Mountains. "Almost home, little moonbeam," Zephyr whispered, smiling as Luna clutched her beloved stuffed fox, a tattered orange toy she'd named Rusty through her limited vocabulary. The toy rarely left her tiny fingers, becoming an extension of her adventures as she explored the world with wide, curious eyes. The highway stretched before them, a ribbon of gray cutting through the vibrant autumn foliage. Zephyr eased off the gas pedal as traffic slowed ahead. A battered green pickup truck swerved erratically between lanes about 50 yards ahead, its rusty frame rattling with each movement. The truck bed was covered with a tarp, but something beneath it shifted and moved, causing the covering to bulge oddly. Luna suddenly stopped her cheerful babbling, her bright eyes fixed on the truck ahead, tracking its movements with unusual intensity. Zephyr thought nothing of it at first. His daughter was fascinated by moving vehicles, but then he noticed her tiny face scrunch with concern, an expression he'd never seen on her before. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, though he expected no coherent response from his infant daughter. A sharp gust of wind ripped across the highway, catching the edge of the tarp on the truck ahead. For just a moment the covering lifted, revealing a glimpse of something that made Zephyr's blood run cold. A cage, dirty and much too small, and inside, pressed against the metal bars, the unmistakable shape of a bear cub. The tarp settled back, but not before Luna let out a distressed wail. Her tiny arms stretched forward, reaching toward the truck as if she could somehow bridge the distance. Rusty, the fox, tumbled to the floor of the car, forgotten in her sudden distress. "Aria," Zephyr said sharply, waking his wife, "I think there's a bear cub in that truck." Aria blinked awake, disoriented. "What? A bear cub?" "Under that tarp, I think they're poachers." Zephyr's hands tightened on the wheel. The cub looked terrified. Luna continued to cry, her wails growing more insistent. Her little fingers opened and closed, reaching toward the truck with unmistakable determination. "We need to call someone," Aria said, fumbling for her phone. "Fish and Wildlife, or the police." The truck ahead accelerated suddenly, weaving through traffic with reckless abandon. The tarp fluttered again, and this time both Zephyr and Aria saw the cage clearly, and the small dark eyes of the frightened cub inside it. The animal's paw pressed against the bars, its muzzle visible as it let out a cry neither of them could hear, but both could imagine. Luna's wails reached a fever pitch. Her tiny body strained against the car seat straps, her face flushed with emotion. It was as if she understood exactly what was happening, as if she felt the cub's fear as her own. "I'm calling 911, Aria said, her voice tight with urgency. "But they're getting away. We can't lose them." Zephyr nodded grimly and pressed the gas pedal, keeping a safe distance but making sure the green truck remained in sight. The poachers, there had to be at least 2 figures in the cab, seemed oblivious to being followed, focused only on their dangerous weaving through traffic. "Dispatch says state troopers are on the way," Aria reported after a tense phone call. "They want us to stay back and just report their location. These people could be dangerous, Zeph." Luna had stopped crying. Instead, she stared with fierce concentration at the truck ahead, her little brow furrowed in determination. Something about her expression sent a chill down Zephyr's spine. His baby girl looked older somehow, wiser than her 11 months could possibly allow. The truck swerved again, cutting off a minivan and nearly causing an accident. Horns blared in protest. The tarp lifted higher this time, revealing the cage more fully. The bear cub scrambled inside its prison, visibly terrified by the truck's violent movements. "They're going to hurt that cub," Zephyr murmured, "or cause an accident, or both." The highway curved ahead, revealing a rest area just off the next exit. The green truck suddenly veered toward it, tires screeching. They were pulling over. Perhaps they'd spotted the patrol car that had just appeared in the distance behind them. "They're stopping," Arya said, clutching her phone. "The dispatcher says to stay in our vehicle, that the troopers will be here in minutes." But Luna had gone completely still, her eyes locked on the truck as it bumped into the rest area parking lot. Her little hands clenched and unclenched, and then she did something that would change everything. She spoke. Not the usual baby babble, not mama or dada or any of her handful of practiced words. "Save," she said clearly, pointing at the truck. "Save Bear." Zephyr and Arya exchanged stunned glances. Before they could process what had just happened, the rest area came fully into view, and with it, the horrible scene unfolding in the parking lot. The green pickup had skidded to a stop near the tree line at the far end of the rest area. 2 men jumped out, one tall and lanky with a graying beard, the other shorter and stockier with a leather jacket stretched tight across his shoulders. They moved with practiced urgency, their eyes scanning the parking lot with the wariness of men who knew they were being hunted. Luna began struggling against her car seat straps with surprising strength. Her tiny hands worked at the buckle, her movements deliberate and focused. Arya reached back to calm her, but Luna pushed her mother's hand away with determined force. "Bear hurt," Luna said, her voice clearer than any infant's should be. "Must help now." Zephyr pulled into the rest area, parking as far from the poachers as possible while still maintaining a clear view. His heart hammered against his ribs. Something was happening to his daughter, something inexplicable, but the immediate danger of the poachers took precedence. The bearded man yanked off the tarp completely now, revealing the full horror of the cub's situation. The cage was smaller than Zephyr had imagined, barely large enough for the young bear to stand. The cub, perhaps 6 months old, pressed against the bars, its fur matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. A chain around its neck had rubbed the skin raw. "Jesus," Arya whispered. "They've been torturing it." The shorter man produced a long pole with a noose at the end, a catch pole used by animal control, but in these hands, a weapon of cruelty. He jabbed it through the bars at the cub, who scrambled frantically to avoid it, crying out in terror. Luna's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her entire body went rigid, her eyes rolled back, and when they returned to focus, they seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. The temperature in the car dropped noticeably, their breath suddenly visible in small puffs. "Luna," Arya's voice cracked with fear. "What's happening to her?" The baby's mouth opened, and when she spoke again, her voice carried an echo, as if multiple voices spoke through her tiny form. The innocent cry out, the earth hears, justice comes. Outside, the wind picked up dramatically, swirling fallen leaves into miniature tornadoes around the poacher's truck. The men paused, looking around nervously. The forest edging the rest area seemed to lean in closer, shadows deepening despite the afternoon sun. "We need to get out of here," the bearded man growled. But as he reached for the cage, something extraordinary happened. Every bird within a mile radius descended on the rest area. crows, ravens, blue jays, cardinals, hundreds of them, swooping and diving at the poachers. The men ducked and swore, swinging their arms wildly as the birds attacked with coordinated precision. Luna had gone completely still now, her eyes fixed on the scene with an intensity that made Zephyr's skin crawl. Her lips moved silently, as if in prayer or incantation. "The troopers," Arya said urgently, pointing to the highway where 2 patrol cars were speeding toward the exit. "They're almost here." But the birds' attack had panicked the poachers. The shorter man abandoned the catchpole and dove for the driver's seat while his partner tried to secure the cage. In their haste, they'd left the cage door unlatched. The cub, sensing opportunity, pushed against the door with desperate strength. It swung open just as the bearded man reached for it. The cub tumbled out, landing hard on the asphalt, but immediately scrambling to its feet. "Shoot it!" the driver screamed. "We can't let it get away." The bearded man reached into the truck cab and emerged with a rifle. Time seemed to slow. The cub, disoriented and weak, stumbled toward the forest. The man raised the weapon. Luna screamed. Not an infant's cry, but a sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. Every window in the rest area vibrated. Several car alarms went off. The very air seemed to thicken, pressing down on everything. And then, from the forest, came an answering roar. The mother bear burst from the tree line like a force of nature, 600 pounds of maternal fury. She covered the distance to her cub in seconds, placing herself between the young bear and the rifle. Her roar shook the ground, primal and terrifying. The poacher's hands shook. He fired, but the shot went wide, striking a tree. The mother bear charged. The men scrambled into their truck, the engine roaring to life. But as they tried to flee, their tires spun uselessly. During the chaos, a thick root had somehow grown up through the asphalt, wrapping around their rear axle. The truck lurched forward a few feet, then stopped, trapped. The state troopers arrived just as the mother bear reached the truck. She reared up, slamming massive paws against the driver's door, rocking the vehicle. The men inside screamed in terror. "Everybody stay in your vehicles," one trooper announced through a megaphone, though most witnesses were already frozen in shock. Luna had returned to normal, or as normal as she could be after what had just transpired. She slumped in her car seat, exhausted, reaching weakly for her fallen toy fox. Arya unbuckled herself and climbed into the back seat, cradling her daughter. "It's okay, baby, it's okay," she whispered, though her voice shook. "Mommy's here." Zephyr watched, mesmerized, as the drama unfolded. The troopers had called for animal control and backup. The mother bear, satisfied that the immediate threat was contained, turned to her cub. The young bear limped toward her, favoring its left front paw. What happened next would remain etched in Zephyr's memory forever. Luna stirred in Arya's arms, pointing toward the bears. "Help, baby bear," she said softly. Her voice returned to its normal infant pitch. "Hurt paw?" The mother bear's head swiveled toward their car. For a moment, predator and infant locked eyes across the parking lot. Something passed between them, some ancient understanding that transcended species. The mother bear nudged her cub gently, then, incredibly, guided it toward the Collins car. She stopped about 20 feet away, waiting. The cub sat down heavily, holding up its injured paw. "She wants us to help," Arya breathed. "But how could she know? How could Luna—" "I don't know," Zephyr said, "but I'm going to try." Against all logic, against every instinct screaming at him to stay in the car, Zephyr slowly opened his door. The mother bear watched but didn't move. The state troopers were shouting something over their megaphone, but Zephyr couldn't hear them over the pounding of his heart. He approached slowly, hands visible and empty. The cub whimpered but didn't flee. Up close, Zephyr could see the gash on its paw, not life-threatening but certainly painful. He'd done basic first aid training, had a kit in the car. "Aria," he called softly, "the first aid kit, under your seat." His wife, still cradling Luna, managed to extract the kit one-handed and toss it to him. The mother bear rumbled low in her throat. Not quite a growl, more like encouragement. Zephyr knelt beside the cub, moving with deliberate slowness. The young bear sniffed his hand, then, amazingly, extended its injured paw. Working quickly but gently, Zephyr cleaned the wound with antiseptic wipes and wrapped it in gauze. Throughout it all, Luna watched with those strange, knowing eyes. She'd stopped talking, but her presence seemed to fill the space between human and bear, bridging a gap that should have been unbridgeable. When Zephyr finished and backed away, the mother bear approached her cub, sniffing the bandage. She looked at Zephyr, and he could have sworn he saw gratitude in those wild eyes. Then she turned, guiding her cub back toward the forest. They paused at the tree line. The mother bear looked back once more, this time at the car where Luna sat. The baby raised her tiny hand in what looked like a wave. The bear dipped her massive head, a bow, and then both bears melted into the shadows of the forest. The aftermath was chaos. The poachers were arrested, their truck impounded. Statements were taken, though Zephyr and Aria carefully omitted certain details about Luna's behavior. Who would believe them anyway? Animal control officers confirmed that the cub had been reported missing from a nearby area 2 days ago, likely orphaned when poachers killed its mother. But this mother bear, where had she come from? No one had an answer. As they finally continued their journey home, Luna slept peacefully in her car seat. Rusty the fox clutched to her chest. She looked like any normal baby, innocent, vulnerable, unaware of the vast mysteries of the world. But Zephyr caught Aria's eye in the rearview mirror and saw his own thoughts reflected there. Their daughter had done something impossible today. She'd spoken to bears, summoned birds, made roots grow through asphalt. She'd been a conduit for something ancient and powerful, something that protected the innocent and punished the cruel. "What do we do now?" Aria whispered, stroking Luna's hair. "We love her," Zephyr said simply. "We protect her, and we watch." Because somehow he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The highway stretched out before them, taking them home. But home felt different now, charged with possibility and mystery. Their baby girl had shown them that the world was far stranger and more wondrous than they'd ever imagined. And somewhere in the forest behind them, a mother bear and her cub moved through the shadows, the cub's bandaged paw leaving unique prints in the soft earth. The birds had returned to their normal activities, the wind had calmed, and the roots had retreated back into the ground. But the connection remained, invisible, unbreakable, waiting. The rest of the drive home passed in tense silence. Luna slept fitfully, occasionally whimpering and reaching out as if grasping for something invisible. Each time she stirred, the radio would crackle with static, and the car's interior lights would flicker. Zephyr white-knuckled the steering wheel while Aria kept turning to check on their daughter, as if she might vanish or transform at any moment. They pulled into their driveway just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Their modest, 2-story house in the suburbs of Albany seemed almost foreign now, too normal, too ordinary for a family that had just witnessed the impossible. "Should we take her to a doctor?" Aria asked as Zephyr turned off the engine. "What if something's wrong with her?" "What would we tell them?" Zephyr replied, running a hand through his hair. "That our baby commanded nature? That she spoke in multiple voices? They'd think we're crazy." Luna stirred at the sound of their voices, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, they held that strange glow again, but it faded quickly, leaving only the warm brown eyes they knew and loved. She reached for Rusty, her fox toy, and cuddled it close. As they carried her inside, neither parent noticed the small gathering of animals at the edge of their property. A rabbit, 2 squirrels, and a cardinal, all watching with unusual attention. That night, after Luna was bathed and fed and tucked into her crib, Zephyr and Arya sat at their kitchen table, cups of coffee growing cold between them. "We need to talk about what happened," Arya said finally. "I know." Zephyr stared into his mug. "I've been trying to make sense of it, but it doesn't make sense, none of it." Arya's voice cracked. "Our baby girl did something impossible. Multiple impossible things." A soft knock at the back door made them both jump. They exchanged glances. It was past 9 o'clock and they weren't expecting anyone. Zephyr approached the door cautiously, peering through the window. An elderly woman stood on their porch, dressed in layers of colorful shawls despite the mild evening. Her silver hair was braided with what looked like feathers and small bones. Her eyes, one blue, one green, sparkled with ancient wisdom. "I mean no harm," she said, her voice muffled through the door. "But we need to talk about your daughter." Arya gripped Zephyr's arm. "How does she know about Luna?" The woman smiled, as if she'd heard the whispered question. "The earth speaks to those who listen, child. Your daughter's awakening has sent ripples through realms you don't yet understand." "May I come in?" Against their better judgment, they opened the door. The woman entered, bringing with her the scent of pine needles and sage. She moved to their kitchen table without invitation, settling into a chair with surprising grace for her apparent age. "My name is Mocha Wind Whisper," she said, folding weathered hands on the table. "I am what your people might call a medicine woman, though that term hardly captures it. I've been waiting for your daughter." "Waiting?" Zephyr found his voice. "What do you mean?" Mocha's mismatched eyes studied them both. "Every few generations a bridge is born. A child who can speak between worlds, human and animal, earth and sky, seen and unseen. Your Luna is such a bridge." "That's impossible," Arya protested, but the words felt hollow after what they'd witnessed. "Is it?" Mocha gestured toward the window. "Look outside." They turned to see their backyard transformed. Animals had gathered. Not just common suburban creatures, but deer, an owl, even what looked like a fox. All sat in perfect stillness, facing the house. "They come to pay respects," Mocha explained, "to the new voice that will speak for those who cannot speak." Luna's cry interrupted them. Not a normal baby's wail, but something deeper, more urgent. They rushed upstairs, Mocha following with surprising speed. They found Luna standing in her crib, something no 11-month-old should be able to do with such steady balance. Her eyes glowed with that eerie light, and when she spoke, her voice carried that unsettling echo. "The stolen ones cry out," she said, her tiny finger pointing toward the window. "The cage makers come for more." Mocha moved to the window, her expression grave. "She's having a vision. Quick, turn on the news." Zephyr grabbed the remote for the small TV in Luna's room. The local news was running a breaking story. A raid on an exotic animal trafficking ring in the Catskill Mountains. The footage showed cages upon cages of animals, bear cubs, wolf pups, exotic birds, even what looked like a young mountain lion. "The connection she forged today," Mocha murmured. "It's opened her to all of them. She feels their pain, their fear." Luna began to cry. Really cry now, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks. But along with her sobs came words, jumbled and urgent. Dark van. Tuesday, school parking lot. They take the golden one. What's she saying? Arya scooped Luna into her arms, trying to comfort her. Mocha's eyes widened. She's seeing the future, the traffickers. They're planning another capture, a golden eagle, if I understand correctly. We have to stop them, Zephyr said immediately. We will. Mocha placed a wrinkled hand on Luna's head, and the baby's cries slowly subsided. But first, you need to understand what your daughter is becoming. This gift, it's both blessing and burden. She guided them back downstairs, Luna now quiet in Arya's arms. The animals outside had dispersed, but Zephyr could still feel their presence somehow, as if the very air held their watchful attention. Your daughter will grow quickly in some ways, Mocha explained, accepting the tea Arya offered. Her mind will expand to hold knowledge beyond her years. She'll understand languages she's never learned, not just human ones, but the subtle communications of all living things. But she's just a baby, Arya whispered, clutching Luna tighter. In body, yes, but her spirit is ancient. She's been chosen as a guardian, a protector of the balance between humanity and nature. Mocha sipped her tea thoughtfully. It won't be easy. There will be those who fear her abilities, who see her as a threat or a tool to be used. As if responding to Mocha's words, Luna stirred and spoke again, her voice small but clear. Bad men come, take special children, make them find animals for cages. Mocha's face paled. The collectors? I'd heard rumors but hoped they weren't true. The collectors? Zephyr leaned forward. A shadow organization that kidnaps gifted children, those who can communicate with animals, influence nature, see beyond the veil. They use these children to locate rare species for the black market. Mocha's eyes hardened. If they've learned about Luna... A car alarm went off outside, then another, and another. Every car on their street began blaring in unison. The streetlights flickered in a synchronized pattern, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Morse code, Zephyr breathed. SOS. Luna's eyes snapped open, glowing bright. They're here. Through the front window, they saw it. A black van creeping down their street, its headlights off despite the darkness. It moved with predatory slowness, as if searching. Upstairs, Mocha commanded. Now! They rushed to the 2nd floor, Mocha muttering words in a language neither Zephyr nor Arya recognized. As they reached Luna's room, the house itself seemed to respond to the medicine woman's chanting. The walls groaned, the floorboards creaked, and suddenly every door and window slammed shut with definitive force. The house remembers, Mocha explained quickly. Old protections, sleeping in the wood and stone. I'm just waking them up. Outside, they heard car doors opening, footsteps on their lawn. Luna whimpered, pressing her face into Arya's shoulder. Hide, Luna whispered. Make them not see. The air in the room shimmed like heat waves off hot asphalt. Zephyr blinked, and suddenly he could barely make out Arya and Luna, even though they stood right beside him. They looked like shadows, barely visible suggestions of form. Her power grows with need, Mocha murmured with something like pride. Heavy footsteps on the porch. The doorknob rattled. Then, impossibly, the sound of a key turning in the lock. They prepared, Mocha hissed. They've been watching. The front door opened and footsteps entered their home. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. Zephyr heard a man's voice, cold and clinical. Bio readings indicate the subject is on the 2nd floor, northwest room. Subject, Arya whispered furiously. They're talking about our baby like she's some kind of experiment. Luna's camouflage flickered, and suddenly Zephyr could see his wife and daughter clearly again. The baby's face was scrunched in concentration, sweat beading on her tiny forehead. Whatever she was doing, it was taking tremendous effort. "She can't hold it much longer," Mocha said. "We need another way." The footsteps were on the stairs now. Zephyr looked around desperately. They were trapped in a second-floor room with no escape route. Then he remembered something Luna had done earlier, something that defied all logic. "Luna," he whispered urgently, "remember the birds? Can you call them again?" Luna's eyes fluttered open, meeting his. For a moment, she looked like just a normal baby, confused, scared, overwhelmed. Then understanding dawned in those impossibly wise eyes. She opened her mouth and made a sound Zephyr had never heard before. Part whistle, part cry, part something else entirely. It seemed to vibrate through the walls, through the air itself, spreading outward like ripples on water. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The footsteps reached the landing. Then the night exploded with wings. Every bird within miles answered Luna's call. They came in waves, tiny sparrows and massive owls, crows and cardinals, hawks and hummingbirds. They struck the house like a living storm, thousands of wings beating against windows, talons scraping at the roof. The men below shouted in alarm. Through the chaos of bird cries, Zephyr heard radios crackling. "We're under attack, some kind of bird swarm. We can't see anything." But it wasn't just birds. The rumble of larger animals reached them, deer stampeding across the lawn, raccoons chattering angrily, even the distinctive grunt of a black bear. Every creature Luna had ever touched with her gift was coming to defend her. "Incredible," Mocha breathed. "I've never seen such a response." Luna giggled, actually giggled, as if the massive interspecies rescue mission was the most natural thing in the world. She clapped her tiny hands, and with each clap, a new wave of animals joined the fray. "Fall back!" The cold voice from below had lost its clinical detachment. "Fall back to the van. We'll regroup," and his words cut off in a scream. Through the window, Zephyr saw him, a man in a black tactical suit being chased across the lawn by the same mother bear from the rest area, her cub limping along beside her on its bandaged paw. "They found us," Arya gasped. "The bears found us." "Of course they did," Mocha said softly. "The bond Luna forged today, it goes both ways. She helped them, so they'll help her. That's the ancient law." The collectors retreated in complete disarray, their van peeling away with squealing tires. But even as they fled, the cold voice managed one last communication over the radio. Subject confirmed. Extraordinary capabilities. Priority Alpha for acquisition. We'll be back with a full team. As quickly as it had begun, the animal assault ended. Birds returned to their roosts. Four-legged defenders melted back into the night. Only the bears remained, the mother standing sentinel on the front lawn while her cub played in Arya's flower garden. "They'll come back," Zephyr said grimly, "with more people, better equipment." "Yes," Mocha agreed, "which is why you can't be here when they do." "Leave our home?" Arya's voice was thick with unshed tears. "Not leave," Mocha corrected. "Transform. There are places where children like Luna can grow safely, learn to control their gifts, hidden places, protected by more than just walls and locks." Luna yawned enormously, the events of the day finally catching up with her tiny body. As she drifted toward sleep, she mumbled one last phrase. "Bear, Mama says thank you. Says we're family now." Zephyr and Arya exchanged glances over their daughter's head. Their world had shifted fundamentally in the span of a single day. Their baby girl was something extraordinary, something that shadowy organizations wanted to exploit and ancient traditions sought to protect. "Where?" Zephyr asked Mocha. "Where can she be safe?" The old medicine woman smiled, her mismatched eyes twinkling. "Have you ever heard of the Sanctuary of the Speaking Hearts? No? Well, that's rather the point. Pack light, we leave before dawn." Outside, the mother bear settled onto the lawn, her massive form barely visible in the darkness. Her cub curled against her side, bandaged paw tucked safely beneath its body. They would stand guard through the night, the first of many protectors Luna would gather in the days to come. The impossible had become reality. The extraordinary had become their new normal. And somewhere in the distance, in a sterile office building, cold voices plotted their next move in a game whose rules were older than civilization itself. But for now, in this moment, a special child slept safely in her mother's arms, surrounded by love both human and wild. The bridge between worlds had been born, and though the path ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Luna Weston would never walk it alone. The pre-dawn hours found the Collins family hastily packing their most essential belongings. Mocha had given them a list. Clothes for all seasons, Luna's favorite toys, photo albums, and strangely, any item made of silver. "Silver holds memory," she'd explained cryptically. "Where we're going, memories are currency." Luna slept fitfully in her car seat, occasionally murmuring words in languages her parents didn't recognize. Each time she stirred, the house responded. A door would creak, a window would fog with frost despite the mild night, or the old oak in their backyard would drop acorns like rain on the roof. "She's dreaming of the old forest," Mocha observed, loading herbs and strange instruments into a leather satchel. "Her spirit travels while her body rests. It's how the ancient ones taught the first bridges." Zephyr secured the last suitcase in their car, his hands trembling slightly. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been making it home before Luna's bedtime. Now he was fleeing into the unknown with a medicine woman who spoke in riddles and a daughter who commanded nature itself. A soft growl made him freeze. The mother bear emerged from the shadows beside their garage, her cub padding along beside her. The massive creature approached slowly, deliberately, until she stood mere feet from Zephyr. This close, he could see the intelligence in her dark eyes, the careful way she held herself to appear non-threatening despite her size. The bear extended her massive head toward him. After a moment's hesitation, Zephyr reached out and placed his palm on her forehead. Images flooded his mind, not his own memories, but the bear's. He saw poachers in the forest, the terror of watching her cub trapped, the inexplicable pull that had led her to the rest area, and most surprisingly, a clear image of Luna surrounded by golden light. "She's sharing her story," Mocha said softly from the doorway. "It's a rare honor. She's marking you as pack, as family." The bear pulled back, satisfied, and lumbered toward the front of the house where she settled again, clearly intending to guard them until they left. "Are they coming with us?" Arya asked, emerging with Luna. "No," Mocha replied. "They have their own path. But the bonds Luna creates don't break with distance. When she needs them, they'll know." As the first pale hints of dawn touched the eastern sky, they loaded into 2 vehicles, the Collins in their sedan, Mocha in a battered pickup truck that looked far older than any vehicle should while still running. As they pulled away from the house that had been their home, Zephyr caught sight of their animal guardians in the rearview mirror. The bears watched them go, and he could have sworn the mother raised one paw in farewell. They drove for hours, taking increasingly remote roads that didn't appear on any GPS. Mocha led the way, her truck moving with surprising smoothness over rough terrain. Luna woke as the sun climbed higher, but instead of her usual morning fussiness, she pressed her hands against the window and watched the passing landscape with rapt attention. "Trees are singing," she announced, her vocabulary still impossibly advanced for her age. "Old songs, older than houses." "What do they sing about, sweetheart?" Arya asked, trying to maintain some normalcy in their surreal situation. "The first ones, the ones who could hear." Luna's reflection in the window overlapped with the forest beyond, creating an eerie double image. "They say I'm late, should have come sooner." The roads deteriorated from paved to gravel to dirt to barely visible tracks between trees. Just when Zephyr thought they couldn't possibly go any further, Mocha's truck stopped in a small clearing. Ancient trees towered around them, their canopy so thick it created perpetual twilight at ground level. "We walk from here," Mocha announced, shouldering her pack. "Walk where?" Zephyr looked around, seeing nothing but dense forest in every direction. Mocha smiled. "The sanctuary isn't found by maps or roads. It's found by intention and invitation." She knelt beside Luna's car seat. "Little bridge, will you ask the forest to let us pass?" Luna giggled and clapped her hands. The sound echoed strangely, as if bouncing off walls that weren't there. The trees seemed to lean in, branches swaying without any wind. Then, between one blink and the next, a path appeared. Not carved or cleared, but simply there, as if it had always existed. They walked for what felt like hours but could have been minutes. Time moved strangely under the ancient canopy. Luna rode contentedly in Zephyr's hiking carrier, occasionally reaching out to touch passing leaves and branches. Each time she did, the tree would shiver slightly, its leaves changing color momentarily before returning to normal. "She's introducing herself," Mocha explained. "The forest has a long memory. It will remember her now." The path led them along a crystal-clear stream that babbled in what almost sounded like voices. Arya stopped suddenly, grabbing Zephyr's arm. "Listen," she whispered. The water was speaking, not in words exactly, but in meaning that somehow translated directly to understanding. "Welcome," it seemed to say. "Welcome, bridge child. Welcome, guardians. Welcome home." "The whispering waters," Mocha said reverently. "We're close now." They rounded a bend in the path, and Zephyr's breath caught. Before them stood a massive tree, its trunk easily 50 feet in diameter. But this was no ordinary tree. Its bark was silver-white, shot through with veins of what looked like living gold. A doorway was carved into its base, tall enough for a person to walk through upright. "The heart tree," Mocha announced, "the center of the sanctuary." As they approached, the doorway shimmered like water. A figure stepped through, a woman who appeared to be in her 30s, but whose eyes held centuries. Her hair was midnight black, shot with silver, and she wore robes that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. "Mocha," she said warmly, then turned her ageless gaze to the Collins family. "And you bring us the new bridge." We felt her awakening. The whole sanctuary has been preparing. "Arya, Zephyr, this is Silviana, the keeper of the sanctuary," Mocha introduced. Silviana, the Collins family, and their daughter, Luna. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. "You were in my dreams," she said to Silviana. "You and the tree people and the star swimmers." Silviana's eyes widened slightly. "She dreams true already. Remarkable." She gestured to the doorway. "Come, there's much to show you and even more to explain." Stepping through the doorway was like passing through warm honey. Zephyr felt a brief resistance. Then they were through, and the world exploded into impossible beauty. They stood in a vast hollow within the heart tree, but the space defied physics. The interior was larger than the exterior should allow, rising in a spiral of platforms and walkways that disappeared into misty heights. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, a soft golden glow that made everything look touched by sunset. But it wasn't the architecture that stole their breath. It was the inhabitants. Children of various ages moved through the space, but these were no ordinary children. A boy of perhaps 10 walked past, a small thundercloud following him like a pet, occasionally releasing tiny lightning bolts that he caught in his hands. A girl who couldn't be older than 7 sat cross-legged on a platform, surrounded by floating globes of water in which a small fish swam. Teenagers practiced in one area, their activities defying natural law. One made flowers bloom and wither and fast forward. Another seemed to be having an animated conversation with a shadow on the wall. "Welcome to the sanctuary of the speaking hearts," Silviana said, "home to the bridges, the speakers, the walkers between worlds." "They're all like Luna?" Arya breathed. "Each is unique," Silviana corrected. "But yes, they all possess gifts that connect them to aspects of nature most humans have forgotten. Some speak to animals like your Luna, others command elements, commune with plants, or see through the veils between dimensions." A flutter of wings announced a newcomer. A barn owl, far larger than any Zephyr had ever seen, glided down to perch on Silviana's shoulder. Its eyes were disturbingly human-like in their intelligence. "Ah, Prometheus brings news," Silviana murmured, tilting her head as if listening. Her expression darkened. "It seems the collectors have not given up. They're mobilizing their full resources." "Who are they exactly?" Zephyr demanded. "Why do they want children like Luna?" Silviana led them to a comfortable sitting area, where cushions that felt like clouds were arranged around a low table. Tea appeared. Zephyr didn't see anyone bring it, steaming in delicate cups that seemed to be carved from single pearls. "The collectors," Silviana began, "are the modern face of an ancient enemy. Throughout history, there have been those who seek to exploit the bridge children's gifts for power and profit. In the past, they were sorcerer kings and dark priests. Today, they're corporate entities and shadow governments." She waved her hand, and the air above the table shimmered, forming images like a three-dimensional movie. They saw facilities that looked like cross between laboratories and prisons, where children sat in sterile rooms, their eyes dull with drugs or despair. They use the children to locate rare species for trafficking, to predict natural disasters they can exploit, to influence weather patterns for agricultural manipulation. The images shifted, showing boardrooms where cold-faced executives discussed profit margins over footage of captured animals and devastated ecosystems. They see the gifts as tools, the children as resources. Luna, who had been playing quietly with a butterfly that kept changing colors, looked up at the images. Her face scrunched with concentration, and suddenly the hologram shifted. Now they showed the same facilities, but the children were free, laughing, their gifts blooming like flowers. The sterile rooms became gardens, the cages became open skies. "She's rewriting their future," Silviana said with wonder. "I've never seen such young talent for vision weaving." "But if she's so powerful," Arya said, pulling Luna protectively closer, "won't that make her more of a target?" "Power alone isn't what threatens them," Silviana explained. "It's Luna's nature as a true bridge. Most gifted children specialize. Animals, plants, weather, earth. Luna appears to connect to all of it. She could unify the others, teach them to work together. That terrifies the collectors more than any individual gift." A bright laugh interrupted their conversation. A boy of perhaps 4 ran past. chasing what looked like a miniature dragon made of autumn leaves. The creature playfully stayed just out of reach, dissolving and reforming as the child giggled. "That's Marcus," Silviana noted. "He creates temporary life from natural materials. Last week, he made an entire army of pine cone soldiers. They staged quite the rebellion in the dining hall." Despite everything, Zephyr found himself smiling. This place, impossible as it was, felt safe. These children were happy, their gifts celebrated rather than feared or exploited. "You're wondering if you can stay," Silviana said gently. "The answer is yes, but not in the way you might hope. Parents can visit, can even remain for extended periods, but the sanctuary exists partially outside normal reality. Extended exposure without the proper gifts can be challenging for ordinary humans." "We're not leaving her," Arya said firmly. "Nor would we ask you to. The bonds between bridge children and their families are sacred. We've prepared a dwelling for you in the borderlands, spaces that exist between the full sanctuary and the outside world. You'll be able to visit Luna daily, be part of her training." "Her training?" Zephyr asked. A new voice answered, young but confident. "To control the gift, understand it, and choose how to use it." They turned to see a teenager approaching. She moved with unusual grace, and Zephyr realized why. She wasn't quite touching the ground. Her feet hovered an inch above the floor, and small whirlwinds danced around her ankles. "This is Tempest," Silviana introduced, "one of our senior students and a mentor for the younger children. She came to us at age 6, much like Luna." Tempest knelt before Luna, who studied her with those two wise eyes. "Hello, little sister," Tempest said softly. "Would you like to see something fun?" She held out her hand, palm up. A tiny tornado formed there, no bigger than Luna's fist. But this was no ordinary whirlwind. It sparkled with all the colors of sunset, and within it, Zephyr could see what looked like tiny birds made of cloud and light. Luna gasped with delight, reaching out. The moment her finger touched the miniature storm, it exploded into 1,000 butterflies made of wind and color. They swirled around the room in a choreographed dance before dissolving into sparkles of light. "She's a natural," Tempest grinned. "Most kids take weeks to learn energy transfer." "The young ones always teach us," Silviana said. "Their connections are pure, unfiltered by doubt or fear. Luna will likely surpass us all, given time." A chime sounded, deep and resonant, seeming to come from the tree itself. Children throughout the space began moving with purpose, some walking, others employing more exotic means of locomotion. One girl dissolved into a shower of flower petals, reforming near a doorway. A boy stepped into a shadow and emerged from another across the room. "Lesson time," Tempest explained. "Would you like to join us for the beginner's circle? We're working on basic communication today, perfect for Luna." They followed the stream of children to another impossible space. A garden that couldn't exist inside a tree but did anyway. Sunlight filtered through leaves that seemed to hold tiny stars. A stream ran through the center, its waters singing that same almost voice from the forest. About a dozen young children sat in a circle on the soft grass. At the center stood a woman who seemed to be part plant herself. Her hair was green and moved like kelp in an unfelt current, and tiny flowers bloomed and faded along her arms. "Ah, our newest sprout," she said warmly as they approached. "I'm Flora. I teach the little ones about the green world, plants, trees, the growing things." Luna squirmed to be put down. The moment her feet touched the grass, every flower in the garden turned to face her. The trees leaned in, their branches reaching down as if to touch her. Even the grass seemed to grow greener where she stepped. "Oh my," Flora breathed. "She's already fluent." How extraordinary! Luna toddled to the circle and plopped down between two other toddlers. One, a boy with silver hair despite his young age, was making pebbles dance in the air. The other, a girl with eyes that shifted color like opals, was having what appeared to be an earnest conversation with a beetle. "Today," Flora announced, "we're going to practice listening. Not with our ears, but with our hearts. Can anyone tell me what the grass is saying?" Several hands shot up. "It's happy," one child announced. "The sun feels good." "It's thirsty over there," another added, pointing to a brown patch. Luna raised her hand. When Flora nodded to her, she spoke in that clear, impossible voice. "The grass remembers when this was outside. It misses the real sun, but loves the tree mother more. It says the star-touched children make it laugh when they run." Silence greeted this pronouncement. Even Flora looked stunned. "She hears the deep stories," the teacher finally said. "Not just the surface thoughts, but the memories held in the earth itself. I've never—" She trailed off, visibly collecting herself. "Well, that's very good, Luna. Can you ask the grass if it needs anything?" Luna placed both palms flat on the ground. Her eyes closed, and for a moment she seemed to glow with the same golden light that suffused the garden. When she opened her eyes, she giggled. "It wants to play music. Can I show it how?" Without waiting for permission, Luna began to hum. It wasn't any tune Zephyr recognized. It seemed to come from somewhere deeper than learned melodies. The grass responded instantly, growing in patterns that created different tones as the breeze moved through it. Soon, the entire garden was singing in harmony with Luna's humming. The other children joined in, each adding their own element. The silver-haired boy made stones chime like bells. The color-eyed girl convinced a chorus of crickets to keep rhythm. Within minutes, they had an orchestra of nature, all following Luna's lead. "She's not just a bridge," Flora whispered to Silviana. "She's a conductor. She's teaching them to work together without even trying." Zephyr felt Arya's hand slip into his. Their baby girl, their impossible, magical, miraculous daughter, sat in the center of a garden orchestra, conducting the music of life itself with chubby toddler hands and infectious giggles. "This is really happening," Arya murmured. "This is her world now. Our world," Zephyr corrected. "We're part of this too somehow." As if hearing his thoughts, Luna turned to look at her parents. She beckoned with one hand, never stopping her humming. The invitation was clear. "Join us." Tentatively, Zephyr stepped into the garden. The moment his foot touched the musical grass, he felt it, a connection he'd never noticed before. The earth beneath him was alive, aware, welcoming. Arya followed, and Luna's smile grew radiant. "Family song," she announced, "all together now." And there, in an impossible garden inside an impossible tree, surrounded by impossible children doing impossible things, the Collins family found their new rhythm. The bridge child had brought them home to a place they never knew existed, a place where wonder was normal, where different was celebrated, and where the connections between all living things sang out in harmonies older than human memory. But even as they sang, even as joy filled the garden, shadows gathered in the world beyond. The collectors were not idle. They had lost their prize once, but they had resources, determination, and most dangerously they had fear. Fear of what Luna might become, of what she might change. The sanctuary was safe, but it was not impregnable. And soon, very soon, that safety would be tested in ways none of them could imagine. But that test came sooner than anyone expected. A sound like thunder cracked through the garden, though no storm clouds gathered. The music faltered as children looked up in alarm. Flora's expression turned grim as her plant hair writhed with agitation. "They've found us," she breathed. "The collectors. They've breached the outer barriers." Sylviana materialized beside them, her moonlight robes now crackling with defensive energy. "Everyone to the heart chamber. Now." But Luna stood up, shaking her head. "No," she said, her baby voice carrying impossible authority. "Running time is over. Connection time is here." Before anyone could stop her, she toddled toward the garden's edge. As she walked, the other children fell into step behind her. Not through any command, but through an instinctive understanding. The silver-haired boy took her left hand, the color-eyed girl her right. One by one, all the gifted children linked hands, forming a chain with Luna at its center. "Luna, no!" Arya started forward, but Zephyr caught her arm. "Look," he whispered. The children were glowing, not with any harsh light, but with the soft radiance of connection itself. The garden responded. Every plant, every stone, every drop of water in the stream pulsed with the same rhythm. It spread outward like ripples from a thrown stone, touching every part of the sanctuary. The heart tree itself began to thrum with power. Its golden veins grew brighter, pulsing in time with the children's joined energy. Even the air seemed to sing. Through the garden's entrance burst figures in black tactical gear. The collectors had indeed found them. But they stopped short at the sight before them. The children stood united, glowing with potential, and at their center a toddler who seemed to hold the heart of nature itself. "Secure the primary target," the lead collector ordered, but his voice wavered. His team raised their weapons. Not guns, but strange devices that hummed with suppressive energy. Luna giggled. It was the pure, delighted sound of a baby who'd discovered something wonderful. "Watch," she said to no one in particular. "Everything's connected, even them." She raised her free hand toward the collectors. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, slowly, impossibly, flowers began to bloom from their equipment. Vines sprouted from their boots, rooting them in place. Their weapons transformed into branches, heavy with sudden fruit. But Luna wasn't attacking them. She was connecting them. The collectors gasped as they felt it. The heartbeat of the earth, the whispers of the wind, the memory of water. Everything they'd tried to exploit and control suddenly flooded into their awareness as a living, breathing whole. "Do you see?" Luna asked, her voice carrying the wisdom of ages in a toddler's lisp. "No stealing needed. Nature shares with all who ask nicely." One collector dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he truly felt the consciousness of the forests he'd helped destroy. Another stared at his hands in wonder, watching butterflies emerge from his palms, butterflies that carried the memories of every creature he'd helped cage. The lead collector, the cold voice from the night invasion, stood longest, but even he couldn't resist the pure force of connection Luna channeled. When it finally reached him fully, he crumpled, overwhelmed by the collective pain of every animal his organization had trafficked, but also by their capacity for forgiveness. "The bridge doesn't just connect nature to humans," Sylviana whispered in awe. "She connects humans back to their own nature. She reminds them what they've forgotten." The transformation spread beyond the garden. Throughout the world, every collector, every supporter of their organization, every cold executive who saw nature as commodity, all felt the touch of Luna's gift. Some resisted, but many couldn't help but be changed by the experience of truly feeling their connection to the living world. In boardrooms and black sites, hardened operatives broke down as they remembered their childhood wonder at butterflies. Executives halted deforestation projects as they felt the ancient dreams of trees. The entire network of exploitation began to crumble, not through force, but through the simple, overwhelming power of empathy. Luna released the other children's hands and toddled over to the lead collector. She patted his knee with one chubby hand. "Is okay," she told him solemnly. "Everyone forgets sometimes, but Earth remembers, always ready to love again." The man looked at her through tear-filled eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know," Luna replied. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, she held up her arms to him. "Up?" With trembling hands, the former collector lifted her. Luna hugged him, and in that embrace, the last of his resistance crumbled. When he set her down, he was transformed, not just in heart, but in purpose. "We have resources," he said to Silviana. "Facilities that could become sanctuaries. Funds that could protect rather than exploit. Let us try to make amends." And that's how the greatest threat to the Bridge children became their greatest ally. The Collectors Network transformed into a global protection agency for the gifted ones and the natural world they connected to. But the greatest miracle was yet to come. As the sun set over the heart tree, Luna yawned enormously. The day's events had exhausted even her remarkable spirit. Arya scooped her up, and the family made their way to their new dwelling in the borderlands, a cozy cottage that existed in the space between worlds. As Zephyr tucked Luna into her new bed, a marvel that adjusted its softness to her dreams, she spoke one last time that day. "Bear Mama says hi," she murmured sleepily. "Says Cubs all safe now. All Cubs everywhere." Through the window, aurora lights danced, impossibly far south, impossibly bright. But in this new world Luna had helped create, impossible was just another word for wonderful. Zephyr and Arya stood watching their daughters sleep hand in hand. "She changed everything," Arya whispered. "In one day she changed the entire world." "No," Zephyr corrected gently. "She reminded the world what it always was. Connected." Outside their cottage, the sanctuary thrummed with new life. Former collectors worked alongside the children they'd once hunted, learning to hear the voices they'd silenced for so long. The heart tree's roots reached deeper. Its branches grew higher, and its influence spread further with each passing moment. Luna slept on, dreams painted in colors that didn't have names, surrounded by the love of her parents, and protected by the combined will of nature itself. She'd built a bridge not just between worlds, but between hearts, human and animal, young and old, lost and found. The Bridge child had shown them all a simple truth. Everything is connected, everything is family, and everything is capable of transformation through love. And in forests around the world, mother bears taught their cubs new stories about a special girl who spoke for those who couldn't speak, who reminded the world how to listen, and who proved that even the smallest hands could hold the power to heal the world. The beginning looked exactly like a happy ending, because in Luna's world, every ending was just another bridge to something beautiful.